Dune Awakening had their last live stream before release, and it was their biggest. It showcased some of the mid to end game content we'll see, along with the deep desert, and it was their best so far. We got to see a lot of new things on the stream that we hadn't seen yet, and a lot to be excited about. I'm going to go over what's new with this and what I'm really looking forward to with the release of Dune Awakening. First off, they showcased some gameplay early on with some of the combat trailer and showed one of the new weapons that I'm super interested in, the Drillshot. It looks like a double-barreled shotgun meant to punch through shields at about mid-range. This is the same as the Disruptor in function, but it's more of a burst shot weapon at medium range. From the beta, I remember it goes up to about 60 meters range when I looked at the tooltips, whereas the Disruptor was functionally a short-range weapon, only at about 10 meters. So the Drillshot, it's definitely going to be an important weapon given the Holtzman shield's effectiveness. They opened up talking about the open beta experience from a couple weeks ago and addressed some hot topics early on and head on. They discussed the showcase of PvP that streamers did and the stun locking issues that were present, and went into some more detail of how they've addressed this issue. For starters, melee attacks will now cost stamina. Heavy attacks are now in place to stagger the enemies instead of just being a slow blade attack. These are now separated. You have heavy attacks and slow blade attacks. The slow blades will actually damage a target that has been staggered from, I suppose, just the heavy attacks. This changes up the melee experience quite a bit from what we played in the open beta though, so it will be interesting to see how this pans out. I appreciate that the devs just acted quickly and are at least presenting ideas, because this wasn't all they had in mind. Players who run out of stamina now and are staggered will now have a second wind ability that automatically kicks in. This will restore their stamina even if they're being hit. This is to help prevent players from being stun locked. I imagine this has a long cooldown, such as needing to either be at a combat or maybe it's a minute long or something. They did not specify that from what I saw here. But all in all, cool concepts. This is going to prevent players from feeling a loss of control in their character. Overall, that felt really bad. So they've at least added some layers to begin trying to solve that. They stated here, and they do this through the interview, that this is a live game though, and they will be actively patching. I'm all for a moving product that is flexible. If things aren't working, they can try something else. Some games are not as flexible to do this, especially if they're also on console along with PC. So overall, I wouldn't expect to have a fully fleshed out final product at release, but honestly, these are sometimes really fun points in the game's combat as you learn and discover what's good, what's crap, provide feedback. Overall, I'm interested to see how they handle this post-launch. I'm kind of excited for it. Later on, we get to see some Buggy gameplay. They're in the Haga Rift region. They were harvesting what looks to be aetheryte crystals. This bad boy here is using a Buggy Ray on top of it. This was able to go in the rift as well and exit, and it has a massive storage. It had 2,500 space that it could hold. So it looks like the Buggy is going to be in big use for how efficient the cutter looked. It harvested a lot per cut, and it can just haul a massive amount. They mentioned as well, this is sort of your mid-game vehicle just for that purpose. This can also be used by solo players who can swap seats and harvest with the beam as well. After showing some Buggy gameplay, we got to see the Assault Ornithopter. This is significantly larger than the Scout Ornithopter from the looks, and it had extra passenger seats. It had a rocket launcher set too, but we mostly just got to see him fly it around. Despite its size, it seemed to have a similar speed to the Scout Ornithopter, but it was not as quick to turn. They showcased the speeds during Vulture mode, which disables the wings flying. They're not flapping, but you just sort of glide. For horizontal traveling, this seems to be the desired way to move around for the Ornithopter. When needing to vertically climb, float around, or maneuver, the wings can be turned back on though, and just adjust as needed. We also saw the Variants and Swatches menu. Essentially, variants are just different skins that we can apply, and these actually change the look of a vehicle. This can be the same for weapons and armor as well, as they described. The swatches are just the different coloring schemes we can apply to vehicles, armors, or weapons. They showed some wind traps in the base as well, which are later game sources of water in Dune. Wind traps look like they'll be key for industrial-sized base farming to have a high supply of water. For those of you that haven't seen the production menus, you will need ample amounts of water in Dune Awake, not just for survival, but to process all of the higher metals from iron on up. It appears to ramp up significantly, so water supply will be very important, and these wind traps are likely to be pretty key. They also discuss circuits, which allow for some level of automation. Essentially, you can set up a fabricator or a processor and have it pull from a specific storage and deposit in another. This creates a small layer of automation. They also showed the Scout Ornithopter a bit as it flew over Mysa Tarill. Not sure what's happening down there, but it looks like there is a giant worm in the midst of some buildings, just kind of frozen. One thing I did find interesting, they fly to an outpost here, and we got to see the vehicle storage tool. It allows you to pack up and store the Scout Ornithopter. This could be very handy to protect your vehicles from storms. This works with sand bikes as well, but not the buggies, so not big vehicles. So it really seems that Scout Ornithopters and sand bikes are probably the only two things that you can pack up and kind of carry around with you. Then they traveled to Arrakeen from an outpost. They had to pay some currency for this, but you can also just travel here from the world map by flying to the edge of it. The merchants there were selling faction-specific swatches, variants, things of that nature that you would probably expect in that faction's town. They then browsed the exchange market. Here, players can buy and sell. They had the bank storage there. Advanced trainers were also mentioned to be located in these cities, except the planetologist, where it appears everything will run through Derek. So to Advanced Trooper, Benny, Swordmaster, and Mentat, you'll be visiting these hubs for your advanced trainers. They showcased the world map and discussed how they can infinitely expand the game's map throughout this world map. This is how we'll reach different lands. At release, we have Haga Basin, which is the zone everyone starts in. Then we will have two faction hubs, Arrakeen and Harko Village. And then finally, we have the Deep Desert. Beyond this, they can run events here, deliver instances, future content easily via the world map for future growth in Dune Awakening. They showed a bit of Act 2's main story quest to showcase an instance we can access from the world map. Here we saw a mission type, style, and dedicated mission environment. This shows their ability to craft specific instance content and different styles of gameplay. There's different approaches we could engage in this mission, like stealth and sniping, or just more straight up brawler engagement. It was pretty nice to see this, and knowing this will also be in release as well. Next up, we saw them discuss factions and the Landsraad race. This will impact all servers on your world. The concept of the Landsraad has been discussed before, but essentially you are fighting to secure votes for your faction. It's a weekly competition. There are PvE and PvP goals you can do to achieve this. The first faction to complete these reaps the rewards. Spice was up next and talked about a lot here as we move towards the Deep Desert, as it's really the most important resource in the Dune universe. You can buy small amounts from merchants or harvest small amounts in Haga Basin. But for the large quantities, you're going to have to go to the Deep Desert. They showcase control points when they started poking into the Deep Desert, which affects the Landsraad race. The Landsraad voting winners get to select specific faction bonuses such as unique weapons or bonuses for their houses. The creative director Joel also discussed the concept of the Deep Desert and their goals. They're looking to create a world that has resetting lightly in the sense of the Deep Desert does wipe like, say, Rust does, but you still maintain your character and progress. I appreciate how this captures the world of Dune again, moving from the survival elements of the desert to then the survival of the politics in Arrakis. They discuss the mechanics of scouting the desert, providing cartography maps. They expect a kind of a weekly cycle where it'll reset. Players first scout areas, find places of value in that week for the Deep Desert map. Then there are logistics and planning, and then you kind of have your high point in the weekend. The Landsraad voting will happen on the end of the cycle, and the storm will reset the whole week. They intend to see how this cycle goes with players and adjust after some feedback. A bit of building was showcased in the Deep Desert as well. Since this is a temporary forwarding base, costs are halved in the Deep Desert because once the Coriolis storm comes, everything gets wiped out. The whole map resets, including your buildings. It'll be nice to utilize saved building schematics for this very purpose. They showcase the deep desert layout a bit and ensured for PvE players that the first 10% of the deep desert is PvE only. This includes shipwrecks and eco labs as well. So the people that are worried about endgame PvP can still find some endgame items here. They then showed the raw size of the deep desert, and it's 81 squares, and they're big. It's kind of potentially too massive in my opinion. It will likely be easy to sneak around in this place, which is nice, but I hope it still has means of drawing meaningful PvP combat as well. The Ornithopter carrier was showcased, which was amazing to see. They took a harvester into the deep desert and were showing how to farm the massive spice plumes. This could be seen from up to 20 kilometers away, which will attract other people and hopefully attract PvP by their design. They had people dropping thumpers around the area to distract smaller worms while the harvester farms massive amounts of spice in the center. Later on though, the Big Daddy ringworm eventually shows up and you have to extract your spice harvester, as anything on the ground will die to the big worm. Beyond this showcase though, we didn't get to see any combat in the deep desert, and we'll have to wait until release to experience this part for ourselves. They discussed world setups with the intention of having roughly 900 people accessible in the deep desert, but only 100 or so within each 3x3 block sector. So that leads us to 9 3x3 blocks, and that's how we get up to 900 people. Joel mentioned how parties now show markers as well, which was a big request from the beta. However, there is friendly fire for guilds, and you will not have markers beyond just your immediate group, which is I think 4 people. The intention here is to prevent people from just easily zerging with multiple groups and guilds. It's a great step towards a potential problem that is likely to happen, and I look forward to kind of seeing what they intend to do with that, with the feedback and just kind of avoiding mindless zerging gameplay, which is definitely going to happen in places. All in all, we got a glimpse of a lot more of the things happening, the potential for some fun in the deep desert, and a good glimpse of hope out there. It looks like there's a foundation for some real enjoyable team-based gameplay. But let me know what you guys think. Are you more excited now for the deep desert and beyond? Does this move the needle maybe for some of the people that were on the fence? I know there's quite a few of you out there waiting to buy Dune. Me personally, I'm a bit more excited for June 5th. But you guys let me know down in the comments. I'd be interested to hear. I hope I see you guys out there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because we're going to be covering a lot of Dune Awakening all through release. I'll see you guys next time.